Hey everybody, welcome into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on a Tuesday and Ohio State Media Day as the start of Big Ten play arrives for the podcast. This is Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, and I am Austin Ward. Spoke with Ryan Day and Jim Knowles, the head coach of the team and the head coach of the defense, to get a feel for where the Buckeyes are. Everything obviously started with the health of this team, so let's do that, Bill.
Are we in the same place with Trevion Henderson than we were with Mike Hall last week, where you asked out Mike Hall? It sounded like he was going to play, and then he didn't play. Or is Trevion going to play this week? What did you guys take from Ryan Day's answer?
It wasn't a very encouraging answer. He said it's a short-term thing, and we'd like to have him available, or we think we're going to have him available on Saturday.
He will be available Saturday.
I
need to go back to the tape, but it sounded like he was pretty definitive. He will be. It wasn't a hedge, was there?
I think it was, we think we're going to have him on Saturday. We'll go parse that Zapruder style later on, but I don't think it was a very serious injury that has Ohio State concerned. Will Trevion Henderson be fully healthy on Saturday against Wisconsin? I don't think so.
Right, and that's the life of a college running back, though. He probably won't be fully healthy till March. So The question is, how much pain can you tolerate? Mm-hmm. The question is, how effective are you in pain? And the question is, if you are able to get out there and give 20 good reps, can you do that and then let Mayan and now an emerging Dallin Hayden take the rest? I mean, it's a physical game coming up. You know that. The Big Ten schedule is going to be full of those. So you're going to be hurt. That's football 101.
It does seem to me, and I don't know if I'm alone on this limb or not, that at this point right now that Trevion Henderson doesn't need 20 touches for this team because of the rise of Mayan Williams. And you all know how I feel about splitting reps in the backfield and what that can mean for them. But I also see that Dallin Hayden is doing things that are similar to what Mayan Williams is doing, which is, Kevin Wilson alluded to this after the game, making one cut and going, making cut and still being vertical and getting down the field. And look, this is not to nitpick or question Trevion Henderson's ceiling. I'm not doing that in any way. I think this team can survive if he is limited. And even if he wants to play and he's 95%, 80%, I don't know, somewhere in there, this can still be a very productive rushing attack.
We all know that Trevion has the home run threat that maybe Mayan doesn't have. We've not really seen that to this point. But based off what we've seen, the gap between the two, I think, is not that big. It's certainly closer than I would have anticipated coming into the season, and that's more of a credit to Mayan than it is saying anything negative about Trevion. So I agree. I think you can go into this game, and if Trevion can only give you 15 to 20 snaps and like 8 to 10 carries, I think that's okay because of how well Mayan has played. The question that I have, based off what Berm just said, maybe it's just trying to be a little cautious with a true freshman. Like, do you guys think that Dallin Hayden showed enough last week that he can be relied upon in a game like this one coming up on Saturday if they need him to be?
There was something, I'll let Berm answer as well, but there was something in Ryan Day's answer about Dallin Hayden that made me think that they're not quite to that point the way that a 100-yard performance would normally lend itself to, and that was you need to take care of the football. Did he fumble against Wisconsin? Against last week, did he fumble against Toledo?
No. He did not, but are you insinuating that he was putting it on the carpet in practice?
You don't bring that up for no reason.
Right, that was the line with Steel Chambers 2 years ago.
I've heard it before.
It's generally one of those things where the Ohio State coaches are really good at saying a bunch of stuff and saying nothing, but then they're also very good at saying nothing and it meaning something. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's one of those situations where you're in a game against a physical opponent like Wisconsin. If you have to turn to Dallin, if he goes out there and puts it on the carpet early, he's not getting another snap. So, if Mayan goes out there and fumbles, you're probably going to put him back out there if Trevion can't go. But if Dallin is having some issues with that, now to be perfectly clear, we haven't heard that that's an issue.
That's speculation, America.
But, again, the coaches here don't ever say something like that for no reason. Did he do enough to be the guy? I mean, we watched Trevion Henderson as a true freshman running back be pretty damn good for Ohio State a year ago. Let's go back to Maurice Clarett back in 2002. He was the centerpiece of the offense. It's not to say a freshman can't be the guy. J.K. Dobbins in 2017 was obviously very good to great. You can rely on a freshman if he's proving it. So clearly they trust him at this point. They gave him more reps on Saturday than any other back. So I would say that whether or not we think he's done enough doesn't really matter. It seems clear the Ohio State staff at this point is feeling confident in him. That said, they still obviously, I'd assume, prefer to have Travion Henderson and Mike Williams as their 1-2. That wasn't the biggest injury news that I heard today, though. It was the fact that Ryan Day said Jordan Hancock hasn't practiced in a while. Like, every time we see him, he's out here in full pads and he's in the sand pit and he's doing stuff. I mean, kudos to Jordan Hancock if he's just putting on full pads to roll around in the sand, because I wouldn't do that.
He's in full pads
sand
on game day.
Everywhere.
He's on the sideline in shoulder pads holding his helmet on game day when we know he's not going to play.
You know, we have been talking about that for a couple of weeks, that Jordan Hancock was not as close to returning to Ohio State as they wanted, or that it made it seem. And that, as you said, is a big deal, because we've seen Denzel Burke continue to struggle. Again, last week against Toledo with the deep ball. That will be we'll be breaking that down tomorrow on Buckeye Q for everybody who wants to see that. And Zach Bourne's thoughts. That was a notable update. A lot of other things that weren't quite as specific. We think that Josh Proctor and Tanner McAllister will be available after dealing with their minor injuries and missing the Toledo game. Mike Hall is expected to be back. There was, an indication of that from both Jim Knowles and Ryan Day. And then right over here, if you hear the robot passing machine, I forgot what Berm called it.
The throwing monster.
The throwing monster. The monster thrower.
The thrower robot.
Marvin Harrison Jr. joined by a new wide receiver today. Who is it over there?
It appears to be Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah,
Interesting.
not Reese Stockdale. Stockdale or Stocksdale?
Stockdale.
But
I mentioned on the radio, I was on 97.1 FM, the fan on Tuesday morning, and I said, whenever I got out here, the first person that was going to be out here was going to be Marvin Harrison. I was bold prediction number 1 for the week, crushed it, because that's all he does. And if I don't mean to, take the show away from anyone here, but if you wonder how a guy goes from being a middle of the road 4-star recruit, I know that sounds crazy, but he wasn't someone that people thought was going to be like an All-American type player this early in his career. It's because he never stops working, and it's pretty tried and true. Like, if you want to be the best at something out here, you just need to do more to practice than anyone else. And Marvin Harrison Jr., who has less reason than most of the guys out here to do it, continues to just be really impressive in his ways.
The reason that I bring up who he's working with is that Jackson Smith and Jigba has spent the last several weeks. He's always been someone we've seen get in the extra work whenever possible. That's part of his rise to greatness. But he's been spending way more time with the training staff and rehabbing and trying to get ready after that hamstring injury. So the fact that he's doing it and right now jogging around a little bit to do that tells me that I think Bill and I both kind of thought when he walked off the field after that second catch pretty gingerly, like, oh no, did he re-injure that? Is that a new situation? Based just on what I'm purely seeing right now, and I'm not a doctor.
None of us are doctors.
I would say that that's a good sign.
He looks to be moving around a lot better than he did after that catch on Saturday. And I was one on Monday morning's podcast daily. I said he was on the sideline kind of doing this. Like, you can't see my legs here, but imagine, America, if you
Just
will.
imagine this man's
Imagine
legs.
that there's something really impressive and physical happening down here where
and you wanted us to scoot up. Why don't we just back
where
up?
my leg is doing a thing, and that feeling when it's like it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel comfy.
A hitch in your giddy up.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a hitch in the giddy up, and there appears to be hitchless,
so to speak,
at this moment.
I thought he looked a little tight even from the start in that game. I mean, maybe that's just the fact that he hadn't played much, but it just didn't look like his normal self from the get-go. He's looking a little more like his normal self than that. Marvin, too, is wearing the black helmet, by the way.
Yeah, they're getting used to that new helmet early on game week.
How much do you think the color changing of a helmet changes the peripheral vision for a player?
I can't imagine it does at all.
But what if it did?
I think it's just so that it fits correctly.
Yeah, I think it's more about the feel on the old noggin than it is.
Oh, you think those are new helmets? You don't think they just paint the
You just paint the silver ones and they'll paint them silver again next week?
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Then get some paint remover.
It's far more cost efficient.
Yeah, cost is no object in this building, actually. Is there anything non-injury related that you learned today?
I am interested in how they're going to try to play Wisconsin. We talked a lot about, is Jim Knowles going to deviate from his normal stuff to a 4-3 in the Notre Dame game? The answer was no. And we think Court Williams playing a game like that. The answer was no.
Yeah.
But I think this is a little different. Bigger offensive line, probably like a better, more sort of entrenched system there. Obviously a much bigger running back with Braylon Allen. Is this the kind of game that gets Jim Knowles to move out of that? My thought is no, based off kind of what he said in there. I think he truly believes that he can be a stout run defense in the Big Ten against teams like this while still playing a 4-2-5. But I don't know. I think maybe he did leave the door open a little bit to see some more 4-3 looks than we've seen to this point, which is none.
I just think that Jim Knowles is pretty darn confident in what Jim Knowles' defense does. And I don't think at this point he has any reason to consider changing it. This is a guy that is, generally speaking, successful at what he does. And until he's not successful, you know, if Wisconsin goes out and runs all over Ohio State, I bet you by the time Iowa comes in here, they change things around a little bit. But
yeah, they're very concerned about the Iowa offense.
It's a juggernaut.
This guy, he knows exactly what I'm saying. And he always just has to make a dig at Brian Ferentz.
Well, in fairness, he does stink.
Sure, but his dad loves him.
That's important.
And we live in a world where a lot of people don't have a father figure that really supports them in their endeavors and their dreams. And so I think it's great.
One might say he enables him.
Some would say supports. I would say supports, but I'm not into semantics like you. Point is,
I'm sorry that I got us onto this discussion for Snappy Jays.
The point is that certainly Wisconsin is going to come in here and try to be physical, but I actually think Wisconsin is going to throw the ball more than people are expecting, because that's where this Ohio State defense seems to be susceptible. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see them kind of come in and throw it around a little bit more, and I don't think the Buckeyes are going to have to change the defense against Wisconsin.
We saw maybe the first day of training camp that Jim Knowles did install a 4-3 look, and we're like, wow, we didn't expect to see that on day one. So there's the ability to do that,
especially with the continued rise of Cody Simon, who played well the last 2 weeks. So.
And he also made some comments way back in the spring. It was like, there are different offenses, different offensive lines, different rushing attacks than what he faced in the Big 12 with Oklahoma State. Maybe it would require some adjustments. I think, to your point, he's going to absolutely start in the 4-2-5, and he is confident that that will work with some combination of defensive backs in a safety-driven style of play, safety-driven defense to try and stop that rushing attack.
Speaking of defensive backs, Denzel Burke.
Yeah, it was Denzel Burke.
Has now joined the two receivers out here. So once again,
2 weeks in a row.
He's the first defensive player out here. So again, he's taking it serious. You don't want to harp on the kid like over and over, but it seems like he's understanding. Austin's having a bit of an allergic issue.
You got a sneeze going on over there?
It's just trapped in there. It'd be so much better if it came out.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. But remember, we did that one time.
Yeah, you did, and now I was like, I can't. Is that going to happen to me? Like, what's going on?
What's going on? The secondary is going to play a bigger role in this game on Saturday than you'd think in a normal game against Wisconsin, because they're going to have to tackle, number one.
For sure, yeah.
And because I also, as I said, I think Graham Mertz and the Badgers are going to be a little bit more aggressive downfield, because if you watch the Buckeyes on tape first 3 games, that's how they've been beaten.
Soft edges.
Yeah.
Ryan Day said that Graham Mertz is the best quarterback they'll have seen so far this year. Do you agree with that assessment?
That they've seen so far this year?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they played Tyler Buckner and Daquan Finn.
Yeah, but Daquan Finn was good.
Daquan Finn is a good athlete.
He creates way more problems than Graham Mertz.
He creates problems. Again, as I talked about on Monday's live show from Roosters, Graham Mertz was unequivocally the number 1 player at quarterback that Ryan Day wanted in the recruiting class of 2019. Unequivocally.
Yeah.
If Ryan Day does not do that and put a guy at that level, if he doesn't believe that player has significant skill set. Does that mean we've seen it in Wisconsin? Does it mean we're going to see the continued evolution? No, but Graham Mertz has been way better in the first 3 games of this season than he was at any point in his previous 2 years for Wisconsin. Now, what he doesn't have is the offensive weapons around him that he's had in the last couple of years at Wisconsin outside of Braylon Allen, but that's not really helping in the passing game. So Graham Mertz is the best quarterback they've played this year to this point, and will probably be the best quarterback they play until Sean Clifford and then J.J.
I just think it depends on what you mean by best, because
I mean the guy that's going to stand in there, and if you give him time to throw the football, he will beat you.
But I think that Finn's ability to extend plays is more likely to lend successful.
Well, against this defense, I think it's clear that is a more successful endeavor.
So, like, to me, like Mertz's ability, it's sort of like the old Christian Hackenberg argument. He was the all-everything 5-star recruit. Well, he wasn't well coached, and then he lost all weapons and got battered behind a bad offensive line, and you're just standing in the pocket like a statue, then Ohio State's going to eat you alive. And I think that's probably more likely to happen to Graham Mertz than Finn. But
certainly, but I think the point Ryan Day is making is that he has the tools to
believes he's good.
That's pure passer. Yeah, for sure.
And that's why you asked Jim Knowles about the defensive tackles. Like, do you like what you're getting out of this group? And again, because no one ever answers a question like directly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read through his answer, and I think his answer was no, not really, but
he realized that he had earlier besmirched the honor of the defensive tackles by saying that Ohio State hadn't actually been good enough at the point of attack. And that was the opening for my question. And then he was like, oh, crap, well, I'm not going to do this twice.
And then he said, well, our defense is not giving up a lot of rushing yards, so clearly things are going well. People don't see what they're doing on the inside. But we do see what they're doing on the inside, and it seems to be a handful of guys that when rushing yards are happening against this defense, there's the same group on the field.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to, on this morning's podcast deal, you said you wanted to talk to him about Tyleik Williams. We didn't get an opportunity
I did not do that,
to get that question asked. But to me, if Ohio State wants to establish that they're dominant up front on Saturday against Wisconsin, you do that by putting Michael Hall Jr. and Tyleik Williams out there as your first two defensive tackles and leaving them there until the game is over.
Yeah, I think that's right too. And my thing with Tyleik is I think sometimes he gets a little overeager to get into the backfield to get a sack. But to your point, as you said earlier this week, the Toledo game was probably, if it wasn't the best, it was one of the best examples of him as a run stopper. And I think in this game in particular, if he goes in with the mindset of like, it's not going to be that kind of game. It's not going to be like a drop back, throw it on the yard pass game where I'm going to try to get 4 sacks. It's about, can I lock up that guard or center? Their center is very good, by the way. And be a force at the point of attack in the run game, because Tyleik has that. I just don't know if his mind's always kind of calibrated to that.
And that's part of being a young player. Like, you are used to dominating. You come out of high school, you're the best player on the field 99% of the time. You come into Ohio State as a true freshman, you have a couple splash plays. The entire fan base is saying, oh, that guy needs to play all the time. He look at him, he got 2 sacks against Penn State. He's the best player we've ever seen. And then real life hits, and the part of like having to do it every day. I think Ryan Day calls that competitive stamina or something.
Mm-hmm. It does.
You have to have that to maintain success at Ohio State, and he's been inconsistent. And you just hope that guys like that realize that maybe reining it in a little bit makes them a much better player down the road.
All right, you can tell that we have a lot on our minds as Big Ten play starts here on the podcast. We're going to do a lot more shows to try and account for that rather than keep you here all day for snap judgments on a Tuesday afternoon. That's Bill Berm. I'm Austin. We will see you for the next one on the podcast.